Well, ho ho ho, Merry Christmas, my sketchy friends. I'm assuming you got this paint palette for Christmas. And so I thought I would recreate the Christmas card that I gave to the people that purchased this for you, so you could recreate it here and kind of see that this is meant to be fun stuff and that it's pretty simple stuff that you can go ahead and give somebody a card, and at the same time you get to practice. So you would have gotten your cool paint palette and with all these lovely colors. These are colors by davinci.com. DaVinci Paints with an S.com is who they are, and I order them online just because they are professional grade and they're good quality and you get a pretty good deal. But watercolor in general is pretty inexpensive in the long and short of it. So you have your three yellows over here. You have burnt sienna and burnt umber, a green. You've got three blues, actually four blues. Then you've got a purple, a cool and warm red in there. So you've got really and truly, you can do a lot. And any of the classes that you will see on my website were all painted with these particular colors, with this same palette. So it's not like I'm using, you know, these sneaky colors that you don't have. And the watercolors will all be listed on the back here so that you can see what they are. And I hopefully have them all in the right order. When I'm doing a bunch of them, the table is full. And this little Dewey here is so that you can look like a real honest to goodness artist. And you can stick your finger out this way or you can put it out this way, one or the other. I find this a little less comfortable. But anyway, so that's what you're supposed to do. And then you have to look like an artist. Well, man, this just puts you right ahead of the game. So you are all set to go with this little devil here. So here we go. So most of the stuff will be in the course that would have been included, the book that was included. And so this is basic watercolor techniques that you're going to be able to do. And then I embellish it quite often with some pens, so it adds a little bit of pizzazz to this whole thing. So I recreated it a little bit bigger. And my guy, obviously this is after Christmas because he looks a little overweight compared to my original fellow, but that's okay. It's all good. So in watercolor, one of the big deals that you have to do is you have to have a plan stand. You have to know what you're going to paint first, second, and third, because if you paint this first, for example, then you can't paint his little vest because it'll just all blur together and blend together. So you have to kind of think about that and what you're going to do. So in this guy's case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint his hat and his vest first, and then I'm going to go paint. I added the tree that's on the back of the card that you would have gotten. So it's not in the pattern, but it's not tough to kind of add in there. And so we can go over there and paint, and then we can put this into the back of it. So in this case here, we're going to be using wet on dry. And the reason we're going to be using wet on dry is this is not a very big place. If we pre-wet this, we will have so much water floating around on this, it'll be hard to maintain it. So I'm going to take my paint brush. I'm going to wash it in the water. I'm going to bring it over here to my damp sponge. Make sure that your sponge is actually damp, that it's already moist. And so when you hold it on here, this will always have some water in it because this will be the same moisture content as this. So now we're going to go over here and, oh gosh, I forgot. We would have, let me get this, at the very beginning of this thing, used your spray bottle and sprayed our watercolors. And the reason we do that is because we have gum arabic on this, and that helps to kind of melt the glue that holds the watercolor pigments together. So I'll put this over here so that I'm not reaching over top of my painting. I always see that after the fact. When I look at the painting afterwards, I'm like, I had to keep reaching over top of this thing. Okay, here we go. So I've got my damp brush, and I'm going to go get some burnt sienna on this, and I'm actually going to lift my even though this is smaller. I'm going to lift this up a little bit so that you can see more of the palette. I'm going to go get some burnt sienna, and I'm bringing it out here, and I run it across this palette. The reason I run it across the palette, and now I can see how thick it is or how intense this color is. And I'm going directly over here onto this little guy's hat and putting the burnt sienna onto here. I'm going to look at this now and say, oh, that's not really quite dark enough. I'm going to go back and get a bit more paint. And because I'm going back directly into there and getting a bit more paint, I have less water on my brush, and consequently, I will not get as intense a color. And so now I'm going to go and get, I washed my brush off. I'm going to go get a little bit of the dark brown color in here, raw umber, and stick some on this corner. And so that's going to darken it. Now, I'm not going to play around with this a whole bunch, and I'll hold this up so that you can see it. I'm just going to let this blend in, and I know that this is just going to all blend in because this is damp already, and then we won't have a problem with that. Now I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to paint this guy's little vest, and you can paint it any colors you want. I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do. In this case, I am actually going to take my damp brush, and I'm going to run it over top of this guy's vest. And the reason I'm doing that is I want this all to just blur in. I have used up a lot of the water that was on my brush. I'm going to go over and get some, let's see, I'll get some Prussian blue and put some up here. I'm going to wash my brush out, tap it off, go get some, let's see, my alizarin crimson. And, oops, I think I must have used the other one in that one. That's okay. And I'm putting this across here. I need a bit more of my alizarin crimson because I didn't have quite enough. And I'm washing that off. And then I put a little bit of green on there. And so I'm just going to go in and put some green on the bottom. Don't have quite enough green. And put that on the bottom here. And I'm just going to leave this alone, and it'll blend and blur in as much as it needs to or wants to. Because this was damp already, these paint colors are going to want to move together and share a little bit. So while those guys are drying, I'm now going to go over here and I'm going to work on our tree. And our tree is just, again, in this case here, let's put this up here so that you can see it. It's just green, and I've dampened this to begin with. And see this spot in here in the middle where I do not put water on, then it will make a hard edge around the outside of that, and I'll have this fun place to kind of put this funky little bit of painting pen work on there. So I'm going to take my paint and wash it off, and I'm just barely tapping it on here so it's not dripping wet because I want a fair amount of water on here. I'm going to bring this over here and run that onto my tree, and I have quite a bit of water on there. I'm not sure if you guys can see how wet this is. And of course, it's not going to show up in the glistening lights, but there's quite a bit of water on there, so I don't want it runny. So I'm just going to go get some of my green paint. Here we go. Can you see that? I'm getting my green paint and putting it onto here. And I'm just going to, oops, and when I put that on there, I didn't leave a wet spot or a white spot that I didn't paint on. So I'm going to have to just not paint a section of it, and it will show up on its own. Using a bit of my Prussian blue. Prussian blue really is a really great one for darkening green. And I'm just taking some and thinking about where it might be a little darker, maybe underneath where I had run the little rope or whatever that was around there, maybe a little bit down here. And again, I am not fussing with this. I am not going back in here and adjusting this. You can see how shiny that is on there. There's the shine right there. You can see how shiny that is. So it's still going to let the paint run back and forth and do its thing that it wants to do, whatever that may be. So we're just going to let it do its job. But see how the shirt blended nicely in together here on this guy here? Yeah. And so that is barely, if at all, damp. And the way you would check if it's damp, you take and put your hand on here, and then you put your hand onto the painting, and if they're the same temperature, it's dry. If this is cooler, it's still wet. Now I'm going to go in on this guy here and take some water. Again, I went in and picked up my water. I'm going to pull this out here so you can see what I'm doing. And let's see. I'm going in and I'm just pulling this across the top of the water paint and just tapping this on here. So I still want to have a reasonable amount of water in here. And I'm going to go along here. Wherever I put water in is where I'm going to end up with color. And now, and quite often in this case, that's why I have this dirty palette. I just take my damp brush and I go get some color and just put it on here. You guys are not going to have that luxury probably. So just barely touch the outside of your paint. You want it really, really runny. Oopsie, I'll bring it back here. When you see this, see how runny this is? It's hardly, it's almost dirty water. And you just run that along here and put some color into this. And you want just different colors. And I often will use a bit of blue right here. Just use a little bit of blue because that usually is a good color. And in right here where his vest is over top of his belly, I'm going to put some of my darker color, a bit more of my Prussian blue, run it along here so that you can see it. And I'm just, and I'm not stroking this in. I'm just kind of going along and shaping this and tapping this into this corner. And because, again, that was fairly damp, it's going to blur out and it's going to be hard to tell where it sort of starts and stops, and it just makes what we call soft edges. So now this guy is sitting there, he's fairly wet. I have a damp brush and I have dry paper. I'm now going to do my wet on dry, and I'm taking this on the very side and I'm just skipping, barely skimming across here. And oh, there's a good spot right there. And you can see how just barely skimming across there. So you don't want a really, really wet brush, and it will make these lovely little striations that you don't have to work too hard to get. I'm taking a bit more of my paint and just putting a bit under here because this is still a bit damp, and then it looks like it's casting a bit of a shadow. It sort of anchors this guy in here. Now I'm going to go and paint his face, and I'll just dampen this a bit. It's pretty dry, and I'm going to use again some of my cobalt turquoise and put that on there, and it will blend out, and it's not wanting to blend out much. So I'm just going along and tapping that edge so that it just sort of blurs out, because I don't want it to be, I want it to be quite blurry in, oopsie, that's upside down, kind of blurry in here, but I need that hat to cast a shadow over top of where his face kind of meets. And so because that's not looking very dark, I'm going to use a bit of my French ultramarine blue and just tap a little bit in there. Doesn't take much. Oops, there's my sponge. Tap that off. And I have a little bit of pink sitting here from where we were using it before, and I'll just take my damp brush and run that along there and tap that into the wet section, and there. He has pink cheeks. already. What a guy. You are getting ready for Christmas, my friend. Now I'm just taking a bit of this vermilion red and running it back out here, and I'm going to put it on my cardinals. And after I put that on my cardinals, I realized that I probably should have used my alizarin crimson for cardinals. So I'm just going to paint over top of that. No big deal. And while I have a little bit of that red in my hand, I'm going to put some on the heart that was on the top of this. And here's my orange. And put his nose in, his little carrot nose in. And we can put a hat band on up here. There. Now, I'm going to just dampen this down here a little bit because I want to get it to look a bit like it's in the snow, like it is on this one here. So I'm using some of my Naples yellow, that kind of buttery looking yellow, using a bit of that because that looks a little bit, I know after I did that I went, maybe we shouldn't be putting yellow snow on there. Okay, here come the Christmas jokes. And I know, there you go. It's hard to work with. All right, and some Prussian blue, or French ultramarine blue, and that will make that look like we've got a shadow going on in here. So we've pretty much got this guy painted now, and now we're ready to do some of the doodads around the outside of this thing. And so because I figured this would be a bit too damp for me to do that, I did much like they do on the big, huge TV shows. I went in and this is the painted one. This is the one that you would have gotten for your pattern, a little bit smaller than this guy. Oh, and the last thing I should do before we move on to this next one is I'm just going to take some water, and this is quite a wet brush. Go get some blue, and let's put it over here in a cleaner space. And now I'm going to take this and just tap over top of this, and boom, we have a snowstorm. So there we are, we're good. So in this character's way, so this guy here is painted. All I did was I added some little checkerboards around the outside of there. So all you do is just go in and fill in some sections. And then it looks kind of, I don't know. I don't know why I'm attracted to this, but I am. I put it in a lot of stuff that I paint. So here he goes with this. And around his little arms. His little armies and his little sleeveys. Maybe add some eyelashes on here. Now when I go to do this, quite often I look for where, and you can see where where I put the water on and I didn't get the water on, and you can see that in this one as well. You can see how there's this really hard edge, and often when I go in to do my doodles, I will follow that edge just where the water went, and it just makes this nice little edge. Or I go hunt for sections where there are different colors, and you can do stuff specifically in those colors, or you could do some dots in an area that sort of fills it in. There's a whole bunch of, you have to kind of do some doodles. You just need to put some little bits and pieces and stuff onto this. You know, sometimes you can make a little swirl up here. You could fix this up a bit. You could maybe decorate the vest, you know, maybe make some trees in here. Here we go. I know they're in the red part and not the green part, but that's okay. It's a Christmas sweater. He's going to an ugly Christmas sweater party. And you could fill this part in if you wanted to. It just adds a little tiny bit of pizzazz to this whole business here that we've got going on. And that's up to you. That's the fun. That's what makes this yours and makes it not mine. In this one here, remember I said we would come back where you can see where I think this is dry enough for me to do this. I'm going to go in where I left the water. Oh, look, it is. It's dry enough. There we go. And then I just put some stripes in there. And I went back later on and got some red and just put it in a portion of the stripe. There. And so you can see that, you know, just adding a little bit of some pen work and stuff onto this really makes a difference. And to do your lettering, the really big deal about lettering is that when you start this, you have to kind of decide, do you want it fat or skinny or whatever you want. So let's say we're going to want it this big. So there. So when I put my M, this part right down here, oopsie, you can't see it because my hand's over it, just where this is here, I'm going to put the E here, and right where this is, that's where my E crosses over. Now I'm going to put the straight line in, and this is where the R crosses over. That part, I think they call it the waistline. So M-E-R-R-Y. Right? And so I rarely, if ever, go in and pre-rule them. After I look at some of them, maybe I should have done that. But there we go. I try and just keep them about the same size. And again, just being aware of where this stuff goes across so that all C-H-R-I, I can't talk and spell at the same time here, people. Okay. And when I do these kinds of M's and N's and H's and stuff, I put the two lines on either side so I know how big it is to begin with. And then there's the A, and again, it's going to go. And then try and get that S to kind of make its curl there. Yeah, see, I should have lined it and done all that stuff. It would have been the right size. And you can go back in. So then the other thing is that you can go back in, and if you've really messed this stuff up and, you know, it's not perfect, you can go back in and add some doodles to it to kind of lengthen some of this stuff out if you want to. And, you know, my theory on most all of this stuff is that if you can't make it perfect, make it as imperfect as possible, and then that makes it look like that's exactly what you intended to do. Nobody knows the difference unless you're filming it, and everybody now knows that that's what I do. So there you go. Secret's out. So that you can go in and fix this stuff up and all of that kind of thing. So have some fun with these things. The other thing that I got here, I hope I can find it on my messy desk, is, here it is. These are the card things. So warning, beep, beep, beep. Be careful before you put this thing in, because each one of these was hand cut. And the other issue is that when you go to put them in, quite often the glue that's on these edges here where you go to slide it in is a bit wonky. So you're likely going to have to trim this edge along here. Where's my scissors? You're likely going to have to trim this edge a bit. So that'll be the edge that's all messy, is that. And don't force it. If you really need to do something, you can go in with like a butter knife or something and just slide it along that edge to make sure that it's not glued or whatever. And sometimes some of them just slide in like, you know, like they were meant to. And then in it goes. So don't force it, otherwise you'll rip the outside edge. And so you just slide this guy in. Anyway, I'm not going to struggle with this. I'll let you struggle with it on your own when I'm not watching. And yeah, see, so just be careful, because if you do that, you'll wreck one of these edges, sort of thing. But now you can put whatever you want into these cards. I get them on Amazon. You can find them easy enough. But this gives you something to practice with. Somebody's going to be delighted with what they end up with. And I hope that you have fun. And Merry Christmas and welcome. And I'm so glad you're one of my new sketchy friends. And I hope you enjoy painting along with the book and learning the skills. Volume 2 will be out as soon as I can get the rest of the filming done. So anyways, Merry Christmas. I guess probably by now it would be Happy New Year. And hope to see you with a paintbrush.